amount of folks that have joined. And Tim, if you don't mind keeping an eye to add folks as panelists as they log in, that would be appreciated. But let's go ahead and get started because we do have a pretty packed agenda as usual. It's been a while since we've had a regular meeting. Last month, I think a handful of you participated in the Smart Cities and Digital Divide workshop that we did, and we had a really great panel and good participation there. So if you weren't able to and you're interested, that's recorded and you can watch it from our YouTube. But for today, if you want to just go to the next slide, please, James. As usual, just a few housekeeping items. If you can stay muted when you're not speaking, that's great. It helps minimize background noise. Please feel free to use the chat for comments, but if you send private messages, those aren't actually recorded as part of the transcript. So try not to use that. If you want to send a comment to me or another Sandag staff member privately, just send us an email or follow up after the meeting and use the chat just for items that the whole group can see and participate in. And then if you can use the raise hand feature to ask a question or to speak at points when we're having a discussion, and we'll have quite a few points in the meeting today where we're going to be asking you for input, but that'll help a lot just to keep things sort of organized and not have us talking over the top of each other. So next slide, please. We have one new member organization that joined since our last meeting in March, and I'm not sure if Anna is with us yet. Crystal, do you see Anna in the?
I don't see her yet, no.
Okay, well, when she joins, we'll let her introduce herself, but Anna is with the National Latino Research Center at Cal State University, San Marcos, and she's a member of our social equity working group at Sandag and reached out with interest in participating in this group, and we were happy to welcome her. I am also quite excited to introduce a new staff member that we have joining the digital equity team. So Crystal is not new to Sandag. I've been working with Crystal for a long time now. She's been a member of my team, and we recently promoted her to a senior planner position, and she's going to be taking on some of the project management responsibility with our digital equity work. So you'll be hearing a lot more from Crystal and seeing a lot more from Crystal, and we are all really lucky because she's just one of those outstanding employees that you never want to lose. So Crystal, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure, thanks, Antoinette. That was very kind of you. So as mentioned, Crystal Ayala, I'm part of the Mobility and Innovation team here at Sandag. I work in our Pilots and Partnerships division, and in my previous role, I was leading the Flexible Fleet Strategy, which for many of you that are familiar with the 5 Big Moves is one of those key strategies for our new regional vision and regional plan. So I'm really happy to meet you all and really excited to be part of this great work and project. If you have any ideas about partnerships or want to learn more about what is on the horizon for our team, please do not hesitate to reach out. My virtual door is always open, and I think my contact information will be included in the follow-up materials. It's nice to meet you.
Crystal.
Antoinette, there's somebody from Nlrc on the call we can ask them to introduce themselves. Conan Martinez.
Okay, good. It's not Anna. It's somebody else from NLRC. That's great.
Hi, thank you for inviting us. My name is Konani Martinez, and I'm the a project coordinator also with the center, and been working with Sandag as well on the CBO working groups with equity and outreach. So thank you for having us.
Yeah, we're happy to have you. Are you doing any work around digital equity at the NLRC?
Currently, no, but it's been something in our radar for quite a long time. So we're really excited to work on this.
We'll give you some work.
Yeah.
Before we move on, do we have any other new organizations or new folks representing organizations today?
This is Matt Rantanen. I don't know if I'm new or not, but new enough. So Matthew Rantanen from the Southern California Travel Chairmen's Association.
Excellent.
Hi, Antoinette. This is Michael Hadland, representing Charter Communications.
Oh, so great.
First meeting here. So thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hello.
Oh, Roland, go ahead.
Hello, this is Roland Oak from SCAG, Southern California Association of Governments, sister agency to SANDAG. We too have a broadband initiative, and I am serving as the lead on SCAG side. Nice to meet everybody.
Thanks, Roland.
Hi, good morning. My name is Gladys Popolatuk. I'm with the California Emerging Technology Fund. There have been other CETF staff on, and I think Debbie's on as well now, but this is my first meeting with this group.
Thanks, Gladys.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Irina.
Hi, my name is Irina and I'm with San Diego Futures Foundation, and I'm new to the foundation and this is my first meeting at SANDAG too.
We're happy to have you. Thank you. Okay, so we've got kind of two different sections of the agenda today. The first is just going through and sharing some updates on progress that we've made on various components of the digital equity strategy. I think at our last meeting, we shared that we were going to be forming a couple of small work groups. We invited you to volunteer to participate in those, to provide input on the development of a communications plan for digital equity and also an economic impact analysis of universal broadband for a region. So both of those initiatives have been advancing. And we also want to talk about a partnership that we have with Cisco, and then a very exciting demonstration project, the Dig Once demonstration project that we've partnered with the county and Caltrans on along the SR 67 corridor. So I'm going to hand it over to Lindsay Hansen from our communications department first, and she's going to talk you through the components of the communications plan that we developed in partnership with some of you.
Thanks, Antoinette. James, can we go to the next slide? Thanks. I'm Lindsay Hansen. I'm a public communications officer here at SANDAG. And as Antoinette mentioned, I gave a brief update at the Taskforce meeting in March that we were developing a communications plan. And at that meeting, we invited members of the Taskforce to participate in a communications work group meeting. So thank you very much to everybody who joined us for that meeting. It was great turnout. I was really excited to see all of the interest. So during that work group meeting, I shared some of the draft goals and objectives of the communications effort. And we got a lot of really wonderful feedback from everybody that was there. So since then, we have incorporated the feedback that we received and adjusted our goals based on what we heard. Primarily, our communications efforts will focus on increasing awareness of the digital divide and the importance of working toward digital equity, providing resources and connections that support organizations working to close the digital divide, and encouraging policymakers, business organizations, and others that have power to really affect change and improve affordability, access, and adoption throughout the region. And finally, to develop an effective partnership, or effective partnerships, excuse me, to help streamline our work. All right, James, next slide. So in speaking with the work group, we decided that breaking up deliverables by near term, midterm, and long term was the best approach. So for the near term, we identified several deliverables that would be helpful for the task force as we move forward. We recently completed a Broadband and Digital Equity 101 piece, which hopefully you all received in an email earlier this week. If you're not receiving our emails yet, because I know there are several new members of the task force here with us today, please go ahead and send us your contact information and I'll make sure that you get added to that list. We're also about to finish up a glossary of terms, and that glossary of terms will be part of a message platform that we plan to develop, and that will also include speaking points and FAQs. So the idea being that we can all sort of have consistent messaging when we're talking about this to different audiences. In terms of near-term deliverables to complete soon, we have briefing materials for visits with policymakers and identifying contacts at every city in the region and the county. And I think we're actively working on that, I believe. And we are also working on developing a dedicated web presence. I know right now stuff is sort of scattered and sometimes it can be difficult to find, so we're trying to remedy that. Currently, we do have a task force page on our website, and I'll make sure to provide that link in the chat just so everybody has it. And there are some resources out there for you to access. But we're also planning to add a project page to our website that can serve as sort of a data portal for research, data, and maps so that everybody can go out there and sort of grab the information that we need. On an ongoing basis, we plan to continue posting to social media, and we do have a couple of samples of recent posts shown here where we talked about the exciting new Dig Once project that Antoinette will talk about later, as well as the FCC's broadband benefit program. We also do plan to continue sending regular task force emails. And with those, we hope to start including more legislative updates, funding opportunities, and then continue to share information about upcoming meetings and recaps. All right, next slide. So thinking in the medium term, we plan to develop a story map, which can be used to highlight not only data and research, but also track the task force's progress. So that'll help us increase transparency about our efforts. We'd also like to identify a speakers bureau of task force members who can be tapped on when opportunities arise for presentations, media interviews, or really anything else. And so between that speakers bureau and the message platform that I mentioned on the last slide, this should really help us manage our workloads, but also get a consistent message out. We just want to make sure that we're all sort of using the same language to the extent possible. We'll also look to obtain media coverage at key points during the process as we're developing this regional digital equity action plan. We'll partner with cities, the county, MTS, and NCTD to help identify additional outreach opportunities that we can leverage. And sort of along with that, we'll develop a toolkit for any interested organizations that have sample materials. This could be things like social media posts, one-pagers, newsletter content, really anything else that might be useful. Next slide. And finally, in the long term, we'll identify opportunities to partner with CBOs, service providers, businesses, and our member agencies at SANDAG to really help people in under-resourced communities get connected. And we'll also develop a plan to inform the general public in the region about the adoption of the Regional Digital Equity Action Plan and sort of what comes next. So this will likely include a press release, social media, newsletter articles, probably more. So with that, those are sort of the primary deliverables that we have included in our plan so far. But I do really want to emphasize that we always welcome input or suggestions. So if you have other ideas, I'm happy to take questions now, maybe hear a couple of ideas now. I know we have a lot to get through today, Antoinette, but if there are any questions right now, I'm happy to take those, or feel free to reach out to me.
Time for a few questions, Lindsay, and maybe you could send out the full plan to the group after.
Absolutely.
Any questions or comments, input, volunteers for the Speakers Bureau? All right. Oh, David, I see you unmuted.
Well, of course, I'm going to say something. No, I think it's great. Love what you guys are doing. It's very comprehensive. And of course, I definitely agree that being on the same page as far as messaging goes is really important. So great work. I think that having, you have a good set of folks that are here as part of the task force that will bring both their organizational perspective, but then also kind of that common language. And I think if we want to continue to drive this forward, especially when, as we've identified in previous meetings, just defining the issue and the issues and what should be done and just sort of framing it up is already going to be a challenge. So I think it's a great idea, and no surprise, Antoinette will not laugh. I'd be happy to participate in the speakers group.
I can always count on you. Thank you. And Caitlin too. Caitlin has also volunteered, and Shariar, Patty. All right, awesome. We're getting a good crew here to help support us. I think too with social media, if you mentioned this, Lindsay, I'm sorry, but if we can coordinate on social media, that's always really helpful too. So we can share your tweets and your posts and vice versa.
Yes, absolutely. If you tag us, I'm actually the one that manages our social media, so I'll see that and happy to share. Otherwise, if you just want to reach out to me and let me know that you've shared something or will be sharing something, I'm more than happy to retweet, share on Facebook, whatever.
So I think we've been getting lots of requests to do presentations lately on digital divide and the work that we're doing in the region. So maybe in the coming weeks, we can schedule a time to kind of go over just the basic PowerPoint presentation with the folks that have agreed to speak on the, participate in the Speakers Bureau and start dividing and conquering on some of these.
And I do see a question in the chat about a directory of social media accounts. That's a great idea. So we can maybe start gathering that information and send it out as well.
Excellent. Okay, so the next item that we wanted to provide an update on is the economic impact of universal broadband in the region. And Crystal's going to be managing this effort, so I'm going to let her just talk about where we're at with that. Go ahead, Crystal.
Yeah, thank you. All right, task force members, the next few slides are going to be all around data. So I'm going to ask you to put on your data hat. At the last meeting, for those task force members that are new, this team actually discussed, the importance of understanding the economic impact of universal broadband to help us make the case for why investing in digital equity is important. And so we've done a little bit of research on what's been done so far, and there's only a handful of economic impact studies out there. The New York City Internet Master Plan is by far the most comprehensive one. They actually use the same economic model that we use here at Sandag for economic forecasting, a model called REMI. And that study was really, really interesting and found that getting all New Yorkers connected would actually help the city gain over $140 billion in city gross product. That's a 9% increase over baseline, about 165,000 new jobs, and almost a $50 billion increase in personal income. Study also found that deploying smart city technologies and ensuring a connected city would provide more efficient city operations that would help reduce local city spending by as much as 5%. So all of this really helps make a great and compelling case for why we should invest in universal broadband. There's also been a few other studies around economic impact of broadband on rural communities. Both University of Tennessee and Purdue studied this in more detail. Chattanooga is by far the biggest success story in the nation of municipal broadband. Their gigabit service generated $1 billion in direct economic benefits over the course of 5 years. And in Indiana, which is largely a rural state, Purdue University found that every dollar invested in broadband returned around $4 to the economy. So this is sort of what we're working with to date. It's certainly not a comprehensive list of case studies, but if you do have any other resources you'd like to point us to, please let me know, type them in the chat or send me an email after. I'd love to hear more. So we're going to be embarking in our own effort here in the San Diego region. As many of you are aware, we're also in the process of developing our regional plan, which happened to be embarking on an economic analysis of its own. And critical to that regional plan and this new regional vision is an investment in digital infrastructure. The 5 big moves just don't function without this digital infrastructure. So we're combining forces and are going to be developing a consistent approach in our analysis with the hope of completing this analysis this summer, as Antoinette mentioned. Now the plan is, we've developed a scope of work. We're negotiating this with the consultant, so I can't share too much details, but the plan is to use a similar modeling methodology as was used in the New York City study. So we're planning to leverage REMI and to evaluate many of the factors that that effort considered, except expanding this to not only focus on one city, but to the entire region. The factors that we will evaluate depend greatly on the data that's available to support the analysis, but some of the factors we're hoping to evaluate are listed on this slide here and include things like gains in labor productivity, impact on jobs, wages, personal income, efficiencies and cost savings that can be realized in delivery of public services, transportation operations, or household transportation costs. So taking a really comprehensive look at the economic impact of this. And to provide guidance along the way, we have formed a technical advisory group consisting of a few of our fellow task force members. Right now, that group includes representatives from the cities of San Diego, Carlsbad, Chula Vista, the Chamber, EDC, and the Communication Workers of America. And this group is going to be providing input on the methodology proposed by the consultant. They're going to be helping us to refine the model inputs. REMI uses a lot of data, requires a lot of data. So this team is going to help us refine the inputs for this analysis. And we'll also weigh in on the final deliverables, which we'll ultimately bring back to this task force once that analysis is completed. So if you'd like to participate in this work group, are interested in learning more, have a passion for economic analysis, we'd love to have you. Please let us know in the chat or send me an email if you'd like to participate in this work group.
Any questions about the economic impact analysis from anyone? Comments before we move on?
Yes, this is Ramesh Rao. I had a question. I noticed that the list of economic factors doesn't include education.
Good point. It
like-
should, absolutely.
Yes, something we'll add. Yeah, absolutely.
Workforce training and education. Yeah.
Yes. Workforce training, yes, we were capturing, and we had a workforce development, but education should definitely be included here.
Antoinette, there are a couple of questions in chat.
Okay, let me see here. Chris, yes, interested in how the study effort could assess VMT changes. I know Roland is here from SCAG, and they're doing a study that I'm hoping we can leverage on how broadband can reduce car travel by allowing for more remote work and accessing remote services. So I'm hoping the methodology that they develop, we can borrow and use in our region. And is there a needs assessment as part of this? I'm not sure what you mean, Cho. Can you explain?
I figured I would just jump in. So as you know, I know that you guys have gathered a lot of data based on the experience of all the jurisdictions, but one of the things that this San Diego Promise and had identified is to just get really streamlined data as it relates to the needs in order to get not only at the potential impact of what, broadband for everyone looks like, but also about what actionable items and what, us as policymakers can really do in order to affect change. So I was just wondering if there was going to be any needs assessment as part of the study.
So yeah, I mean, along the way, we've been sharing data, both like you're right on policy and permitting practice of cities, but we've also been sharing information on where there's gaps in service, where there's issues with, higher concentrations of low income households that haven't adopted service. So every meeting we've been sharing some of that data, and the plan is to wrap all of that into an existing conditions report. We'll bring an outline back next month in June. I'll share some data actually shortly, but definitely needs assessment is that's the process that we're in right now. We're doing a broadband gap analysis and needs assessment so that we know what the strategies are that we need to put forward in our digital equity strategy and action plan.
And Chio, the item coming up on the survey that we'd like to conduct, I think is another great point that we love to get your feedback on around assessing the needs of the community.
And then it looks like Ramesh mentioned education. Yes, Ramesh, we're adding education. So we'll follow up with you on some specific ideas that you might have.
And I also added, as I was looking at the list again, access to healthcare services.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yep. Definitely. All good feedback. Thank you. Okay.
Ramesh, do you want to participate in our work group?
I don't know what I'm signing up for, but I definitely feel that it's important to get the education and the health thing in. So yeah, definitely interested in that.
I'll follow up.
Sure. Thank you.
All right. Shall we move on to the next topic then? Let's see any other questions. Okay. So we were presented with a really unique opportunity to bring more resources to the digital equity strategy through a partnership with Cisco. And if you're not familiar with Cisco, they're a global technology and data company, and they've offered to bring more people power to our project. And they have a proven process that they've used to help communities across the country align stakeholder interests and needs and develop these strategic roadmaps. So they've offered no cost support, which is wonderful. They'll bring a team of experts to conduct 50 or more interviews with digital equity stakeholders that are important in the region. And the intent is to help us to really identify and understand policy barriers that are impeding broadband expansion, and then to help us really prioritize strategies that will address those barriers. Many of you will be asked to participate in those interviews. Please look out for an invitation and try to make time. Ultimately, this work will be integrated into our overall regional strategy and action plan. And I think we have Jeremy Stanley here from the Cisco team today. So I would just want to let him introduce himself and take a few minutes to talk about the process and where maybe they've done this work before. So Jeremy, you want to unmute yourself? Are you still with us, Jeremy?
It seems like he's muted. I see him speaking, but we can't hear him.
Jeremy, we can't hear you. It does not actually look like you're muted, but we're not able to hear you.
Or maybe Roy would like to speak.
Okay, trying again. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, you're good. Sorry, we're
Perfect.
not using WebEx.
Yeah, perfect. My apologies. Well, Antoinette, thank you for the opportunity to speak on Cisco's behalf. And we really look forward to the opportunity to work with all of you on this initiative and move it forward. To give you a little context about myself, my name's Jeremy Stanley. I lead Cisco's U.S. public sector business transformation efforts. And our team is really focused on helping leaders in public sector drive change, and especially with initiatives that align to our company's interests. And I'll talk a little bit about that. So Cisco's overall goal is to accelerate global problem solving to benefit people, society, and the planet. Some of the places where Cisco focuses its effort is data and privacy, environmental sustainability, leading a conscious culture, and finally, technology for good. Partnering with Sandag helps Cisco deliver on its commitment to power an inclusive future where everyone has access to the internet. Some example of Cisco's efforts are an investment of $50 million to end poverty in Northern California, $100 million to reverse impact to climate change, and $250 million to fight COVID-19, and an investment in a rural broadband innovation center to transform the economics of networking and improve the cost structure to connect more people and reach underserved communities to power an inclusive future for all. Cisco Systems has partnered with Sandag to assist in co-developing a roadmap, as you heard Antoinette mention, to streamline the deployment of broadband in the region, especially those in areas that are underserved. Cisco will provide a framework to identify and align the necessary components of a digital equity strategy for successful outcomes in this critically important initiative. This roadmap will be co-developed for the region and its unique needs. We've accomplished similar engagements in other municipalities and governments and nonprofits and NGOs across the US. Our team's primary focus is to help leaders in public sector accelerate transformation. And this initiative, it really aligns to Cisco's overall interest, and we want to help you drive this change. With that being said, Antoinette, hopefully that meets your expectations. And if you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out to the Cisco team.
Thank you, Jeremy. I believe that if I recall, you've done some digital equity work in Maricopa, so not too far from us. Is that right?
Yeah, here in my home state of Arizona, we have done work on that in the greater Maricopa County region and worked with a metropolitan planning organization, helping them in the state leverage connectivity options and planning for a long-term roadmap as well.
Thank you. Anybody have any questions for the Cisco team or for Sandag? This is, I think, as all of you know, we really have a very small budget for this project, and it's mostly being led by a small team of staff at Sandag. So it's really great to have the additional resources to help us with this project. David.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, good. This is good with Cisco. It's not a question for Cisco, it's maybe for Sandag, but have you guys talked at all with anybody from Google as well? With the Google Fiber team, they've got a lot of experience with kind of help on the view of how to interface well with municipalities.
We have not, but it sounds like we
Okay.
should.
Well, if you have, yeah, if you're interested, I'll
maybe
Google Fiber kind of was a zenith, that kind of went across the horizon there, very burned brightly, and they're not necessarily growing, but let me see if I can connect you guys to a couple of the contacts that I did have there that I think would provide you some additional useful insight from how to put together a roadmap and maybe an input in part with working with Cisco here.
Cool. We
Yeah,
would
okay.
appreciate that. Thank you for the offer, David.
This is Jeffrey. I have a quick question. I'm from Caltrans. Wanted to see how did Cisco help other locations to solve the last mile or like the last connectivity from the middle run to where service providers are not available. I don't know if this is something that could help the group.
Could you say that one more time? I'm sorry, you broke up. a
Yeah,
little
one
bit.
of the challenges, like as Caltrans, our right of way would probably provide the middle portion. And
Uh-huh.
then we need to connect that to people that needs it, like homes, and this is a challenge sometimes. And I don't know if how you resolved it in Arizona or if you want to help the other group, like see if this was an issue as well in other areas.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, the short answer is this a multi-dimensional answer depending upon the environment, the situation, access right away, and frankly, the topography of what the environment situates. So I think there is no silver bullet to any of those on the last mile, and same as on the middle mile as well. And I think we have to look at each situation uniquely and determine the optimal solution for that. I think the main thing for us is we're trying to facilitate U.S. public sector to figure out ways to streamline policy opportunities, and then for us, change the economics of the networking piece to reduce the cost for those that are providing services to be able to do that in an effective way. But in terms of a specific solution to solve that, Abu, I'm not sure that there is one unique one to do that, because all the situations are usually highly complex and not simple.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, moving right along then. Can we go to the next slide, please, James? So this is one I'm really excited to talk about today. We had a really great opportunity present itself, one that we weren't expecting, and that has come together incredibly quickly. So a month ago, we started working with Caltrans staff to identify planned roadway improvement projects that could be leveraged to expand fiber infrastructure in areas of need. And we learned that the State Route 67 was slated for a major pavement rehabilitation project this summer. And it actually presented a really strategic opportunity to add fiber along an 18-mile stretch of the highway where there is currently no fiber, as you can see in this map. It's the green line there. So that segment of the project is basically like Lakeside through the end of Ramona up to the State Route 78. So what we did is we proposed to add micro trenching and add fiber conduit to the rehab project. And this added about $7 million to the project cost. Fortunately, the state has identified a large portion of that additional funding, but there was still a shortfall and local funds were needed. So the county and Sandag have partnered and secured the remaining funds. So a week ago, I think it was, the County Board of Supervisors approved their portion, and our board is scheduled to approve our portion tomorrow. Yesterday, the California Transportation Committee approved and allocated funding for this project contingent upon our board's approval, which we're expecting tomorrow. So construction begins on this project this summer, probably in August, and the project will be complete by November. So now that we've got the funding secured, we intend to put out a request for information to identify interested providers that might want to partner on this project so we can do a demonstration of how Dig Once could possibly work. So I'm super excited about this opportunity. It has been a whirlwind figuring out how to make this happen in a really quick amount of time. This all came together in just a few weeks, actually. So next slide. I wanted to share just a few of the demographics and kind of data in the corridor that's being served. There are 225,000 residents that live in the communities along the stretch of State Route 67. 30% are low income, 40% minority, and then about a quarter of the population are seniors and youth. So I think in addition to creating this opportunity to expand better broadband service to these communities, by adding fiber, we can also get the intelligent transportation solutions out there that can improve safety, which is a huge issue in this corridor. There's a lot of safety challenges. So it's a really exciting project. Does anyone have any questions? Well, we'll keep you all posted.
Congratulations, this is awesome. This is like moving swiftly and making action and doing all the right things. This is tremendous. And that's not a small section to sneeze at. So awesome job.
Thank you, David. I want to give a shout out. I think Cody from Supervisor Reamer's office is here today, but he actually pulled an all-nighter like he was in college, getting the report added to their agenda last week. So thank you, Cody, from the county, for advocating for this project and working with Supervisor Anderson's office to make it happen.
It was a pleasure. Thank you. You guys are great to work with.
So we're gonna keep on with this approach, working with Caltrans to look at projects that are coming up for this type of rehab work and comparing it to places where we know we don't have fiber infrastructure, so that we can ideally, raise the funds that we need to add the fiber. And so this hopefully will be like a demonstration. We'll learn from it so that we can, move forward in the future with the lessons learned. Oh, go ahead, Gladys.
Hey, Antoinette, thanks. Quick question. So there is, I think you are aware, Antoinette, but for the group's benefit, there is also Elizabeth Duher, who is statewide the broadband kind of liaison, right, for broadband and the between ISPs and Caltrans. So I wanted to make sure that she's aware of the success stories so that she can kind of lift it up and then also, make sure she's aware of it.
Yeah, she usually is here on our task force. I don't think I saw her today,
Okay.
But yes. So Chris Schmidt from District 11 actually used to be the statewide broadband coordinator. I know he coordinates and communicates with Elizabeth.
Yeah, and Elizabeth is aware. I think, like you mentioned, it's quite a success. It's kind of a model that we're trying to stand up for Caltrans. As Gladys is aware, we've had, various mandates for the state to do more with broadband. And here's really a tangible example on what we can really do with our Dig Smart policies and doing something innovative in partnership with the region. And so, if it works down here, we're going to make it work everywhere else in the state. That's really the intent.
Congratulations, all of it. It is really tremendous. Thanks.
I think it'll really inform our strategy too and action plan. So we'll learn a lot from this project, and then we can incorporate our learnings into the longer term roadmap.
One quick question. So just, so who kind of owns the fiber? Who would be able to access it? I don't want to get too much in the detail, obviously, just what's the kind of thinking there for that section? So
Caltrans, and we're entering into a fiber sharing agreement with the county as well.
Okay.
Yep, and then, we're putting out the RFI and hope that will attract the interest of a provider. So there may be a third party involved as well. Anything you want to say about that, Chris?
Well, I think you bring up a good question, David. And I think that this is part of the lessons in terms of what is the appropriate way to partner with private sector individuals to do this. Antoinette alluded to a fiber sharing agreement that we already have at the public agency level in the region that many are not aware of. And I think that is something that we're leveraging here. The fact that we already have that partnership at the public agency level is super important. And we'll be working with the county to add them to that agreement so that they can share in the benefits here. But then the question is, how do we leverage, private sector involvement, and how do we occupy the same trench, if not the same conduit, and basically work together to have a serviceable, functional facility that both sets of parties, public and private, are utilizing effectively. That's something we need to demonstrate. People like to have their stuff separated, like severely separated, as you can imagine. And, partnering requires that, we do it a little bit more closely. And I think that's going to be something we'll have to work out. And we're very interested, quite frankly, in seeing how private sector is going to react and what they're interested in doing with us. We believe that we're making the heavy lift here. This is the hard part, getting the conduit in the ground and all of the physicality involved with doing that. Pulling the fiber and ultimately connecting it, as one of the questions was, to the last mile, that home connection. That's really the private sector forte. So we're here to figure it out and see what lessons we can learn.
Thanks.
One additional question. I think folks will have and be interested in is the funding and how you were successful in doing that.
Well, first of all, I think there's a key one there, Gladys, that I think you'll appreciate at CETF is that we're making it very, very clear that the state transportation dollars right now are being used for the state transportation investment specifically. So, you know, what we're putting in the ground in way of a trench, the conduit, the fiber that we're providing is all in support of the transportation infrastructure in the corridor. And the additional funding that's being provided by the county and the region is really that portion which is going to be used for the broadband, you know, future utilization, if you will. So their cost contribution is a cost share on placing that conduit in the ground. And so that's how we were able to successfully make the argument that this is the partnership opportunity and why, you know, our state transportation dollars should be utilized in this manner, because we do have this partnering and we have this cost share. So thanks for asking that. That was a big hurdle to overcome, quite frankly.
Yes, and definitely the other, sorry, I keep thinking of things. Antoinette, I don't mean to belabor, but the other part of this success story is the partnership that was necessary for this success. So that, you know, just keeping that as a part of your story going forward, Antoinette, I think is really important and will be, you know, key to replicating the success.
Yeah, absolutely.
So Antoinette, Ramesh, I had a quick question. So did I get it right that as of now, there is no worked example of using the Caltrans fiber to extend a connectivity all the way to homes or educational institutions and places like that? Is that correct?
I think that's correct, right, Chris?
Yeah, I mean, I think if you're asking the question, what we're putting in the ground is, you know, capacity, but there is nothing specific that we're, you know, hooking up right this moment. Now, in the conversations that we had with county staff, they're very, very interested in making sure that some specific, you know, public infrastructure could be utilized in terms of making those key connections, you know, whether it's community centers, libraries, things like that. So, you know, literally, we've done all this in weeks. And so we haven't figured out all the details. But clearly, as Antoinette indicated, you know, we've got, you know, hundreds of thousands of potential residential customers, and there's lots of public infrastructure that could be connected as well. And I think in the coming weeks, we're going to figure out what is all that need out there and how do we, you know, partner with somebody to fill that need.
Yeah, we've already, the CTC approved this yesterday afternoon, and we had our first meeting with the county and Caltrans this morning to start laying out a plan and strategy for what comes next. So, and part of that is really putting together that fiber connectivity plan. Where do we need those points of connection so we can get, you know, community centers, libraries, schools that the county would like to connect, connected to the fiber.
Yeah.
Well, we'll keep reporting back to this group as the project progresses. But like I said, construction starts in August, so this is moving quickly.
Quick question. This is Adrian Salas with Crown. Yeah, this is a very exciting project. Did I see the plan was for microtrench?
Yes.
Okay, that's exciting on its own, you know, as a proof of concept and to show the efficiencies of that technology. Just one thing that came to mind is several providers in a microtrench might be difficult just from a spacing standpoint. So as much as I want to see a huge scale microtrenching demonstration, there might just be some physical limitations to accommodating more than one provider in there. Just something to think about.
Chris, my understanding is that it's kind of quasi micro trench. It might be a little deeper.
Yeah, it's going to, you know, again, microtrench is sort of a generic term for making, you know, these installations a little cheaper, more cost effective. So that's kind of the general term here. But I think what you're alluding to is, you know, the duct bank that's going in there will have multiple conduits. And to the extent that there are multiple parties in the same trench, they're going to have to play nice with each other, and we'll have to figure this out. Yeah. And I think that's part of the demonstration. And to be perfectly blunt about it, if multiple private sector entities would like to cooperate with each other, fabulous. We're here on the public sector side to cooperate with the private sector, right? And so I think there's lots of little tests to go through here. And I think the challenge is to work those things out. You know, there's lots of concerns about access and liability and maintainability, and we can go on, right? Yeah. But we need to sort some of these things out to make this more ubiquitously viable.
I love it. Yeah, thank you.
No better way to do it than with an actual project, right?
And the microtrenching is maybe specific to this project, but it doesn't have to be. Like if we have a long lead, we could probably just do regular conduits. It's just, this one is a short term, and the condition of the geography, like the rocks and stuff, that's what made micro trenching is the correct solution for this one.
Yeah, and especially at 18 miles, that'd be a long, regular, traditional trench to dig, and micro trenching could probably do it in a fraction of the time.
Adrian, I thought you would be happy to hear that we were using micro trenching. All right, any other comments before we move on? Okay. So now I'm going to kind of jump into the next section. If you want to switch slides, James, that'd be great. So just some brief updates on our broadband gap analysis. I think you all know that we've been working really hard to acquire the level of data that we need to be able to do planning work, and that's just been really difficult. But we continue piecing together, various data sources, and we'll share a few new pieces of data and maps that we've put together since our last meeting. But we want to spend the most of the time talking about a new partnership with Ucla. So we'll spend 15 minutes or so looking at some of the broadband performance data that they're sharing with us through a partnership. And then, recognizing that there is still gaps in data, we also want to have a discussion today about doing some of our own data collection through surveys. And one of our task force members has developed a survey that she'd like our support with. She'd like to do a pilot project with the survey in some of our rural communities, Borrego Springs. So we'll talk a little bit about that as well. So next slide, please. You saw this on the SR67 map, but I didn't explain what this was. So at our March meeting, I talked about how difficult it was to identify where fiber is located in the region. This detailed data is just not publicly shared by regulators and providers. But fortunately, our partners at Caltrans worked with the CPUC to determine a way in which the data could be used to at least identify census blocks where fiber is present. So the blue areas on this map represent those census blocks where fiber is located. It does not imply, though, that it's widely available or that internet service is good in these particular areas. The fiber could simply pass through a portion of the census block, but it does really help us to start to identify areas where there are clear gaps in the middle mile network. And it's no surprise to see that the biggest gaps are in the rural areas, but there's definitely some holes in the urban areas as well. And just to demonstrate that the presence of fiber doesn't always equate to any particular level of service, you can see here that there is fiber all along the I-8 corridor. But then if you look at the map on the next slide, please, James, where this is the map of where we have fixed broadband service in the region. And it's clear here that the I-8 corridor communities are not well served. So just wanted to make that point. Next slide. We've also been using census ACS data to start to identify areas in the region where there's a high percentage of low-income households that don't have broadband at home. And I think there's some animation in the slide, James, so just go ahead and click through. But again, the challenge with the ACS data is that there really isn't enough data collected at the census block level for it to be reliable. So we had to do our analysis at the zip code level. And even then there's a few zip codes where there just isn't enough data for us to be able to say it's representative of that zip code at large. So this slide does show zip codes that have higher percentages of low-income households without internet service. Most are concentrated in the southern portion of the county, City Heights, Logan Heights, National City, San Ysidro, but there's also a very large zip code that covers Julian and East County that also has 21% of low-income households without broadband at home. I don't have the data point on this slide, but we also use the ACS data to look at broadband adoption among seniors. And we learned that in our region, 17% of seniors, so that's age 65 and up, don't have a broadband subscription at home, which is pretty high percentage. Next slide, please. So we just released a report on a statistically reliable survey of both businesses and employees to learn about remote work practices during the pandemic and plans for the future. I presented that to our policy advisory committees last week, actually, and we posted the full report our Sandag website if you're really interested. It's an interesting survey if you're interested, but I did want to pull out a few data points that I thought this group would be particularly interested in. So I added a question to the survey about, internet reliability while working from home during the pandemic. And 39% of businesses and 42% of employees reported that problems with internet service was a challenge for them with remote work. So I thought you would be interested in that. Next slide. So in March, at our meeting, we looked at some speed test data provided by MLab, and I mentioned that we were working on this partnership with Ucla to acquire data and access their speed test tool. And I'm happy to announce that we executed an agreement with them last week. So we invited Ucla here today to do a demonstration of what they offer. And then we selected 2 zip codes in the region to focus on today. But we have 12 months worth of data for the entire county. So if there is enough interest from Taskforce members, we could schedule a separate session to go deeper and spend more time looking at different communities of interest that you might want to explore. So with that, do we have our the Ucla team members on the call now?
Yeah. Hey, Antoinette.
Hi, Rob and Brian.
Hey, everybody else.
Yes.
Well, thanks for the great introduction. And James, thanks for running the slides. My name is Rob Perry. I'm a sales director here at Ucla, focused on the government and in the EDU space. I'm also a San Diego State alumni, and it's great to be here today. So we wanted to, first thank you guys for the great partnership that we just kicked off this last week. And we really believe that there's some incredible data that we can show you and to really help a lot that we've been talking about in terms of broadband, connectivity gaps, and even mobile as well. So that's a quick introduction. Next slide, James. And so we'll review the speed test intelligence portal. For those of you guys that don't know what speed test, it's a mobile app on either a desktop or a mobile device. This is our dashboard where you would get an overview at a city or a zip code level, which we'll go into. Next slide. That looks blank. So I guess oh, here we go. So this is going to show you how we're going to be able to, regardless of what provider, whether it's Comcast, whether it's Cox or Spectrum, we can actually layer where the speeds are. So James, if you keep going, we're going to layer these where you're going to have under 25 megabits per second. And as we go here, James, you can go to the next slide. We can layer them. We're basically red's going to be below the FCC minimum. So here, anywhere you're seeing red or yellow, that's going to be where we have not seen any sort of speeds north of 50 megabits per second. So if you're planning for today, you probably want to concentrate on the red dots where there's nothing above 25. But if you're planning for the infrastructure of tomorrow, the next 5-10 years, you probably want to address any clusters that are in red or yellow. And these are highly accurate speed test measurements taken on Wi-Fi devices. So we're going to be testing Cox or Spectrum or AT&T. Next slide. We'll also go into cell analytics. So when people press go, we take speed test measurements there, upload, download, latency. When people have an Android device and they opt in, we're actually able to continue to take background scans while they're on the go. And we're going to create some pretty incredible heat maps to show you where cell sites would be or some indoor coverage rankings. Next slide. I'll scream through this really fast, but this highlights some of the initiatives we've done with the state of Georgia, how to address some of their education needs. Next slide. And this will dive into how we were able to use cell analytics, which we'll quickly demo, to show you how they were able to go to sites that they are familiar with, schools, churches, libraries. Next slide. And with that, be able to create a map. So we plugged in all the schools in red, the libraries in green. And then from there, we were able to draw a polygon around it where this particular school, which is in a suburb of Atlanta, where you have a Verizon or an AT&T hotspot or a mobile device, it's going to be extremely challenging to learn. Those are very, very poor speeds. But if you have a T-Mobile chip or a T-Mobile hotspot, you're going to be able to learn very, very quickly. So this is how, next slide, the state of Georgia was able to identify a criteria where you wanted to be close to a tower, you wanted to have a certain threshold of speeds and throughput. Next slide. To essentially have a giant spreadsheet throughout the entire state to say, these are the areas that we can put school buses to equip students to go to learn if they don't have the means on their own. Next slide. And how they were able to create maps per each county and hand those to the county and say, if you need to roll out a Wi-Fi hotspot or to send children to areas anywhere in the green dots is going to have a really good experience for T-Mobile or Verizon or et cetera. So that's real quickly some of the initiatives we're doing with Georgia. Happy to send the greater slide deck, but I think for the rest of the 8 minutes or so, we wanted to dive into actually some of the data that we have for you guys. So James, if you don't mind letting me share my screen, we can dive into our speed test intelligence portal. All right, so you should see it here. We wanted to start out with the data that we have for all of the state of California, and then zone into San Diego and then National City and in Tacoma. So here we have California. This is going to be in 2020, we had a little over 42 million speed test measurements throughout the state. So when we talk about broadband or mobile data, we're going to be very, very well positioned. And you can see from 2016, we had 27 million. And then that just has quickly spiked with the pandemic. But if we zoom out and want to just focus on San Diego County, we're still looking at about 3.5 million tests in San Diego County this last year. On the right-hand side, we're going to see a performance map. Just because a tile isn't lit up doesn't mean we don't have data for that. This was a map really built for marketing organizations. And so we wouldn't want, Verizon, for example, to say that any one test is indicative of the whole network. So when you zoom in, you'll see that the tiles are going to pixelate a little more, and where, Escondido might have, 900 tests for here, or, 5.1 thousand, and Ramona, it's going to be closer to, 16 or 3. So the raw data will provide a better picture of that. If we go down and looking at San Diego in specific, the average download speed is going to be 94 megabits per second. And so that's the average download is going to be 94 megabits per second. And you can see again the trend from 2016 and on. If we go down, you can see, if I move that up, you can see how we're going to have 1.5 million tests for Cox, 900,000 for Spectrum. Again, pretty healthy. And even once you go down to some of these smaller guys, we're still looking at tens or thousands of tests to show some of this data. There's other ways to hone in if we want to take a look at National City. We're going to see 19,000 tests. Again, we're going to be able to zoom in, check out what the various download speeds are. If you want to add Cox, for example, we can go and see how Cox and AT&T, and we'll just pick spectrum as well. So now we can start to see within National City how many tests we're looking at, but more importantly, what the download speeds and what the upload speeds are. Over here, we want to maybe just look at what AT&T looks like. We're going to be able to see the data specifically for AT&T. Again, this is more at a high level. We're looking at a zip code or a city level. The raw data will go into much more detail because people are going to be taking a speed test on their mobile device while connected to Wi-Fi. That's going to light up that GPS chip. All right, so that very quickly, and I think we're running a little behind time, is going to be our speed test intelligence portal, showing you specifically our broadband data. Now, if we switch gears to do mobile data, I mentioned earlier, when somebody has a Android device and they press go, we're going to take a speed test measurement then. When they have an Android device, we're also going to be able to capture I guess, speed test while they are moving. So here, if we want to go to National City, there we go, and we can pick, we can pick T-Mobile, and now we can look at what T-Mobile's LTE signal is going to look like within National City. It's going to take a little while to draw because we're looking at a decent amount of data. But now we can very quickly see a heat map where if you're in the light green, you're going to be equivalent of what that would be 5 bars. If you're looking at anything that's very, very dark red, you'll consider that 0 to 1 bars. A little more RF engineering math gets into that, but that's a general assumption. So if we're, down here and we're going to look at this, which is clearly a pretty bad spot for T-Mobile, we can very quickly draw a polygon. And this is kind of what I was alluding to, how the state of Georgia was selecting criteria for where to send hotspots. You can see here that you're going to have pretty, decent service, on most carriers, but in T-Mobile, you probably would want to avoid getting a T-Mobile chip in this specific polygon. There's also other ways to look up where individual cell sites are, and that's going to be based on our speed test data, where we're going to actually triangulate and figure out where the various eNodes Bs are. So if it's pink, it'll be T-Mobile, red, it'll be Verizon. And there's other ways to show who has the best indoor coverage. So here, we're going to click on that. We should see a quick building draw up. And once we do that, let the data draw a little more, we're going to be able to go on to one of these buildings. Maybe I'll go to one of these so you can see it. And now we can actually see who has the best network, what the various networks are in terms of mobile performance, and some additional RF engineering, RSRP, RSRQ, SNR, etc. So I know I zoomed through those slides in the demo pretty quickly, but we're very happy that we have a pilot program going on with SANDAG to give you guys worth of data and to really help analyze, where you guys, want to go, where you currently are, and the current state of network. We clearly have a handful of data, and we're looking forward to the maps and analysis that you guys are working on.
Hey, thanks, Rob. This is Sanjeev Nanda with Sandag, and we're just pleased to have you join us. It's only been a few days that we've got access to this data, and a couple of experts on our data analytics team have started looking at this data sets. And I just wanted to kind of emphasize, Rob, that our interest is kind of not exactly the kinds of things that you highlighted, some of the things that you highlighted today. We're kind of focused on looking, just what people are achieving, what data rates people are getting, who has where broadband is, available and adopted, and so on and so forth, and not particularly the kinds of things about choosing, which carrier, which hotspot, and so on. That may be a need for some city program or project at some point, but from Sandag's kind of perspective of analyzing the digital divide, we're quite focused on aggregating across carriers and just looking at, and we were able to do that. Actually, I looked at the data over the last few days, and we don't really need, there is actually a very easy way that you've offered to kind of say all carriers and then just present the data rates. In fact, you showed one of the early plots you showed was what data rates are available, 25, 100, and over 100, and it didn't need to look at carriers. So.
Okay, yeah, well, in terms of, being able to have the raw data to slice it, within a specific city level or within more of an aggregated level to be able to create, a broadband graphic, that would have the Ucla brand of approval. I think we're definitely have shared the resources to kind of give you guys a guide to do that. And our, data team and our technical account managers are here to, help this pilot be successful and help you guys navigate the data as best we can.
Yeah, we'll be asking for your help for sure.
Wonderful.
Rob, I had a quick question. This is Ramesh. Are you accounting for the time of the day when these tests were made? Is it averaged over a certain duration, or are you able to provide that level of granularity so we can tell what these numbers look like during work hours and off hours and so on?
Yeah, we'll always take a timestamp. This dashboard is a very quick glance to see if you type in National City or if you type in Pacific Beach, you'll be able to see the top providers in terms of who's winning in mobile speeds on an average. But you guys are also leveraging our raw data where you'd be able to only look at certain time periods. So absolutely, this portal breaks it up by year, month, quarter, day, or week, but the raw data provides a very high amount of flexibility for you guys to look and slice that data, as you mentioned.
Yeah, thanks.
Welcome.
Antonio, there are a few questions about whether this data is available to task force members, and maybe you want to comment on that.
So we offered to do kind of a separate session where we can look at specific communities. So it seems like there's enough interest from City of San Diego, among a few others, to do that. And so we can reach out to set something up after the meeting. And
is there, yeah, okay, thanks.
I think that's really the only.
There's also a question from Sydney here about using this to do an analysis on speeds and availability of the new fixed wireless networks. And I do believe that is something that we're able to look at through this tool. We're able to look at both fixed and mobile networks, right, Rob?
Yeah, I just focused on fixed here, but if you go to quick switch of a tab, you could see the same type of data for mobile.
This is Brian Dar from Ucla. I'd like to add just a little more color to that. If it's mobile is truly mobile, so it's going to be T-Mobile, Verizon, AT&T, and in some areas you'll have regional operators, of course. Fixed wireless is considered fixed, even though it is wireless. So it will show up in the fixed category.
Yes, thanks, Brian.
Crystal, did you want to move on to the next item since we're getting close on time?
Yes, let's do that. And we'll follow up with more information on that session and Ucla's availability. So thank you all. If you are interested in that session, please pop a note in the chat so we can follow up with you and make sure you're included in that. All right, so in our next slide, please. This data that Ucla just shared and then the information that Antoinette shared earlier is really starting to paint a better picture of the state of broadband in the region, but it's still not the full picture. We're missing a lot of data still on household adoption, who's actually using broadband and who isn't. Is it a factor of affordability? And those that are accessing broadband, is it performing well? Is it adequate? Is it meeting their needs? And normally for something like this, we do a larger scale market research study or survey. But as Antoinette mentioned, we're limited in the funding that we have to conduct something like this. But lucky for us, our task force member, Elaine Tulving from the Anza Borrego Desert Research Center, has developed a survey to pilot in the Borrego Springs area. And our research team has agreed to support her in developing the survey and helping to develop a survey distribution strategy. Now, we think this is a really great opportunity to use the pilot in Borrego Springs and expand it to assess broadband adoption in other underserved parts of the region. I know it's something that this task force member is very interested in, task force group is very interested in. And we've done similar efforts, using the sort of community-based serving approach, grassroots approach to reach, members of the region. We recently did a community mobility needs assessment study with our partners from the Social Equity Working Group. That was a coalition of 13 organizations that helped to get the word out of the survey and reached almost 3,000 community members. And that was successful in large part because of the collaboration that we had with the organizations. We were able to leverage their networks, access residents through newsletters, social media. Some even conducted phone banks and collected survey information at in-person community events. Both Anna and Barry from Anna from Nlrc and Barry from Urban Collaborative are two task force members that participated in that effort. I'm sure can speak to the process of that and success of that project. But I really want to hear from this task force group, how we can tap into your networks to expand this survey and reach the households that we're trying to reach through this. I think we're really going to need your help to ensure that this is reaching the communities we'd like to reach, and want to hear from you how we can, think creatively around deploying the survey and making sure we're getting the word out. So if anyone has ideas, is interested in helping us get the word out, we'd appreciate your help. We'll be following up with more information once we have the survey conducted in Borrego Springs, but I think this is something we're really interested in hearing from the task force in helping us to distribute the survey. In terms of timing, the Borrego Springs pilot, we're hoping to distribute that sometime in the next month or so. We'd like to tap into not only community-based organizations, but schools as well. And so we're sort of facing, the end of the school year. So we're trying to get the survey out in early June so that we can then expand that to the broader region in the following months.
Thank you for that information, Crystal. This is CEO Crespo with the San Diego Promise Zone. Just for the awareness of everyone in the group, the Promise Zone will be hosting its second workshop on digital inclusion next Tuesday at 2:30. We had a really successful first workshop back in December that was attended by over 100 folks that represent different community-based organizations that serve Promise Zone residents or are in the Promise Zone. I think that would be a great opportunity to be able to flag that this is something that you guys are working on, and we're happy to partner in the future for you to have a more a broader role within that workshop, because it is well attended. And during our next one, we will be talking about outreach and program specifics as it relates to the emergency broadband benefit, as well as the expansion of SD Access for All here in San Diego and everything that's available in terms of devices and connectivity. So I'm going to drop some further information on the chat, but I want to make sure that this group is represented there as well.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much. Paul, do you have an opportunity to help us out too? through the Housing Commission.
Yeah, sorry, I had to unmute. Hi, everybody. I'm Paul Morris, Project Management Office Director for the San Diego Housing Community. We're about a month behind on our residential survey. We're planning on sending that out next week to over 2,000 residents that we serve to find out a little bit more and then provide that data back from what we get from our residents. So looks like there's a lot of different surveys going out. We're basing ours off of work we did with the city of Long Beach. So I know I was asked to share that earlier on. We're just not there yet, but I know that we're going to be working closer, and we are working with the mayor's office and the city on that too. So I just want to let you guys know we're sending one out too, and we'll have some data to provide hopefully in the next month or two.
Maybe we can get together and compare surveys.
Yeah.
Paul, is that survey ready?
The survey, I believe, is ready.
The instrument.
I'm actually working on the side while I'm attending this meeting on getting that going. So, but yeah, I'll check with them to make sure that it's okay to share at some point.
And the same the question for Kelsey right before that. Kelsey, I think. I'm sorry, I'm not sure I got the name, but when is this outreach, 8 weeks of outreach starting and in City of San Diego? For the
so we're working with some trusted community partners, one of them being Pillars of the Community. Also ZIO is a part of this, and it's starting next week and it's going for 8 weeks. And they're going to do boots on the ground outreach with tablets, informing people and assisting in enrollment for the emergency broadband benefit. So it might be a great opportunity to incorporate this survey, if the timelines work.
If we can have a few short questions on that tablet, you might be able to accommodate.
Yeah, because as ZIO has said, we really want to get a better understanding of need. Yeah, in these communities.
Right.
We'd love to coordinate. And Dennis, I see a note here from the chat that Chula Vista Elementary School has also been conducting a survey. We'd love the connection there if we can tap in and learn more about their surveying effort. Anytime we can, combine forces is better. Okay, great. Well, thank you. If you have any other ideas or have seen surveys popping up on your feed or social media, please pass them my way. We'd like to, use as much of the data that's already out there as possible.
Yeah, and let's not wait for task force meetings to share this kind of information. Let's keep this coordination going via email when there's surveys and things that we can all benefit from. Things are moving so quickly. We don't have time for waiting every 4 weeks to meet and to catch up. So.
Alrighty, so switching gears here with just over 10 minutes left, we wanted to take some time here at the end to provide you an update on some of the legislative and funding programs that are also changing quickly. So Lori and Robin from our government relations team are going to provide a quick update, 5-minute update on the latest and greatest.
Great, thanks, Crystal. This is Lori Grover. I can kick us off, and then Robin can follow up on the state side. What I'm going to talk about, it sounds like most folks are aware of, so it's good that everyone's kind of staying abreast on all that is moving rapidly at the federal space. So I will just start by saying earlier this week that the U.S. Department of Treasury announced the launch of the coronavirus state and local fiscal recovery funds that were established in the American Rescue Plan Act to provide the $350 billion in emergency funding for eligible state, local, territorial, and tribal governments. The Treasury also released some details on how these funds can be used to respond to the pandemic. And with the launch of this funding, eligible jurisdictions will be able to access relief in the coming days to address these needs. Broadband infrastructure investment is an eligible expense under this program, but given the myriad fiscal challenges that jurisdictions have faced, we may see relief going to other outlets at this point. For the Coronavirus Capital Projects Fund, the Treasury Department released a brief statement on the overall purpose and application process for the Coronavirus Capital Project fund of the American Rescue Act of 2021. This is the $10 billion capital projects fund that was established to provide funding to again, states, territories, tribes to carry out critical capital projects, directly enabling work, education, and health monitoring, including remote options in response to COVID-19. The Treasury Department is saying that they'll begin to accept applications for review in the summer of 2021 and will issue guidance before then. I'm going to skip over the EBB, the emergency broadband benefit. It sounds like some folks are already familiar with that program. And then I'll just move on just to say that the American Jobs Plan, which the Biden administration's American Jobs Plan included the $100 billion proposal to provide the country with quicker internet service. The plan would prioritize internet networks run by local governments, which many states currently restrict. The Biden team is looking to address connectivity struggles, not just in rural areas, but in suburbs and big cities as well. And as most are aware, the American Jobs Plan is currently being discussed in Congress. So as progress on this deal is made, I will continue to provide this group updates. I will pass it over to Robin to finish out the state updates.
Thanks, Lori. Good morning, everyone. So like Lori said, I'm sure you're all very well aware of all of the bills going on in Sacramento, but just to make sure we're all on the same page, I'll just run through the ones that we're tracking. And as always, please flag any other bills that we don't have on our list yet. Or if you're taking any positions, we would love to hear about those. So to just set the stage first, this is kind of a really critical point in the state legislative cycle. We're just about at the midway point. So all bills basically need to be in the Appropriations Committee right now if there are any fiscal implications tied to it. So a lot of the bills that I'm going to mention are either set for a hearing next week or on the suspense file. And all bills have until May 21st to get out of the Appropriations Committee, again, if they were considered fiscal bills. And then they have until June 4th to get out of their first house. So if they're an assembly bill, they need to be out of the assembly over to the Senate by June 4th and vice versa if they were a Senate bill. So I think probably when we meet again in another month is when we're going to really know which bills are going to make it through the cycle and which ones we should really start getting engaged in. As far as SANDAG, we're kind of waiting for that month to start taking formal positions. But like I said, we're definitely tracking a lot of these. So just to run through those briefly, I think everyone knows, and we've been talking about this since the beginning of the task force, about SB 4 by Senator Gonzalez and AB 14 by Assemblymember Aguirre Curry. Both of these bills have to do with the California Advanced Services Fund. They each would extend the fund, SB 4 from 2022 to 2032, and AB 14 would extend it from 2022 to perpetuity. They also make various changes to the actual fund, eligible projects, and entities that can apply for those monies. Also watching AB 34, this one would enact the Broadband for All Act of 2022, which would be a bond measure in 2022. Lots of folks are watching this one very closely. I know that there have been some concerns expressed because private corporations would not be eligible for the funding under this bond act. Also in play right now is given the expected state budget surpluses. If funding does come through the state budget process, what does that mean for this bond measure and other bond measures under consideration by the legislature right now? So this one we should know more, like I said, in another month or so once the budget has been figured out. SB 28 by Senator Caballero would enact the Rural Broadband and Digital Infrastructure Video Competition Reform Act of 2021. This would essentially require the California Department of Technology to compile an inventory of state-owned resources that could be used for the deployment of broadband. It also would expand the authority of the California Public Utilities Commission to regulate cable video franchises and requires the Public Utilities Commission to consult with local governments regarding franchise violations. This bill specifically would give regulators the right to revoke the licenses of cable companies. So perhaps not surprisingly, it is opposed by the CCTA and the California State Association of Counties. We'll see what happens with it. It's due for its hearing by the Senate Appropriations Committee next week on the 17th. And then the final two bills that I'll mention today are SB 378. This one is by Senator Lena Gonzalez, and this has to do with requiring local jurisdictions to allow for micro trenching. Crown Castle is a sponsor. It has a lot of other industry support as well. And I understand the League of California City is actually working with the author to seek some amendments. And then SB 556, this one is by Senator Bill Dodd and would enact the California Connectivity Act, which requires local governments and municipal utilities to make their streetlights and traffic poles available for small cells. It also regulates the fees that local governments can charge for such attachments. This one has drawn significant opposition from the local government community, including from the League of California Cities, but it actually made it out of all of its committee and is now on the Senate floor for final passage before it gets to the Assembly. And then the last thing I'll mention, this ties back to what Lori was talking about. California is set to receive about $26 billion of discretionary funding from the federal government through one of the recent COVID relief bills. And so there's definitely lots of speculation that some of this money will be targeted for broadband efforts throughout California. SANDAG has submitted a letter of support to the budget committees on the Assembly and Senate side, supporting the requests submitted by the California Association of Counties for $8 billion of that funding to be used for broadband. So we encourage everyone else to express your support. If you agree, we'd love to get that money out and flowing so we can do more projects like the one we talked about on SR 67.
Thank you, Robin and Lauren. Lori, sorry. And as mentioned, we are tracking this legislation really closely, and we'll be working on that policy brief that the task force members expressed interest in once we have a better idea of what comes out of the committees. So there's also a lot happening on the funding side of things. On the next slide, we'll just quickly have Audrey Porchella from our grants team walk through some of the potential grant programs and opportunities out there. We do just want to mention that Lori talked about this, but the American Rescue Plan Act funding is, while not specific to broadband, it can be used to fund broadband infrastructure. It's actually what the funding source the County of San Diego was able to tap into to allocate for the SR 67 project. So that is something that is on the table and something for us to be thinking about. Audrey, do you want to give a little quick update on grant programs?
Yeah, hi, my name is Audrey Porchella, Associate Grants Analyst in the newly formed Grants Division. So we love legislation because what happens is we get discretionary funding that comes out of that. And so it sounds like there's going to be a lot in the realm of broadband. So just to go over some kind of high level, so the California State Library High-Speed Broadband Grant, that one is kind of out there by itself in terms of my list. But just to note that there are different targeted grants to different agencies. So this one obviously is targeting libraries. Libraries and public agencies are eligible applicants. And that one, what's fun about this one is that they're accepting applications on a rolling basis. They have about $5 million available for that. It does have certain match requirements, which is interesting based on the size of the library, and then also the income of the library. The NTIA grants, that's National Telecommunications and Information Administration. So again, legislation came out that provided funding for 3 completely new grant programs, and I'm only highlighting 2 of them, but the Broadband Infrastructure Program, as well as the Tribal Broadband Connectivity Program. The broadband infrastructure has about $300 million going towards it, whereas the tribal broadband is $1 billion. These notices of funding opportunity, which we call NOFOs, haven't been released yet. So these are ones that we're going to be tracking to see how we can tap into those. These grants, particularly the broadband infrastructure, requires partnerships between a state and providers of fixed broadband service, which is why this task force is so awesome, because hopefully SANDAG's role in this could be matching people up to each other. That, and we often provide letters of support to projects, because obviously this aligns with some of our initiatives at SANDAG. I want to highlight the USDA. This is the Department of Agriculture. They have rural development grants. So when I was researching this, I was like, Department of Agriculture, why are they involved in here? But they do have a role in helping rural communities develop. So they have quite a number of grant programs. I only put 2 on the slide: Rural E-Connectivity Program and the Community Connect Grant Program. Again, state, local governments, tribal governments, and even nonprofit, for-profit LLCs are eligible for these funds. There's multi-million dollars. The Rural E-Connectivity Program is interesting because they have a grant component, a loan component, and then a 50-50 grant loan component. So that one I just wanted to highlight is kind of unique in that regard. One that's not mentioned here is the distance learning and telemedicine grant. The application deadline is June 4th. So if you didn't know about it yet, not much time, but
Can you hear
I
me
wanted
now?
to highlight that.
I can't hear you now. So it's like,
Hi, keep going.
all right, I'm just gonna have to turn off this digital.
Okay, keep going. Just wanted to highlight how some broadband and digital connections can be hidden under other things like distance learning and telemedicine. So that said, the last 2 bullet points is saying that basically SANDAG goes after a lot of different grants, particularly from the Department of Transportation and also state funded grants, SB1 grant programs. And as was mentioned with the SR 67, we're trying to implement kind of dig once sort of things where if SANDAG is going for a capital improvement project, we're going to look at how we can incorporate fiber. So that's just a high level update. And with that,
thank you,
I think we're out of time, but I'll hand it over to Crystal.
Thank you, Audrey. And I think what we really want to get across is, the value of this task force is that these grants are competitive, right, in nature, but there's a lot of value in having a coordinated approach in the way we go after these grant programs. So we're here to help as a regional body, and as a fellow task force member ourselves, we want to help ensure that we are bringing funds into the region. So any way we can collaborate and coordinate and support, we're here to help. So I think we're going to wrap up this meeting with just a summary of next steps and our next meeting. Antoinette?
Yeah, just quickly. So we'll get that speed test meeting scheduled, and we're going to start to do some analysis with the raw data that we have. The economic analysis work group will be kicking off in a couple of weeks, and that project will, be a quick one. We'll get it done this summer. The stakeholder interviews with Cisco are just start in June, so please keep an eye out for invitations to participate in that. At our next meeting in June, we also want to bring an outline for the Digital Divide Existing Conditions report. So we've been compiling all of this data. Now we want to turn it into a comprehensive report that really, describes what the digital divide looks like in the region, in our urban communities and our rural communities. So we'll discuss that outline with you in June, and then we'll come back with a draft report in July. So right now, please hold June 17th for the next meeting. We will get a formal notice out about that shortly. So thanks, everyone. Oh, got a question from Dennis. Yes, we can, absolutely. We don't even have to wait for the next meeting to do that, Dennis. So we should definitely be having conversations right now about positioning ourselves to go after big dollars as a region, which is why we really wanted to have that discussion. There's a lot of money out there right now. So we need to get organized and coordinated. So we can talk about scheduling kind of a special session around some of those grant programs since there's interest. All right. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. We'll send along the presentation materials.
Thank you. Great meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, guys. Have a good day.